Demonlover is a film bizarrely ahead of its time. The best way to describe it is as a corporate espionage thriller involving the seedy underbelly of adult Japanese animation. The Volf Corporation is trying to secure distribution rights to the works of a Japanese anime studio that specializes in more, tentacle-based material. Meanwhile, their main competitor, Mangatronics, will stop at nothing, including murder, to try and sabotage the deal. I don't want to give too much away because there's a lot of twists and turns that are worth preserving for a first-time viewer, but think of Demonlover as something like The Big Short meets La Femme Nikita. I also don't want to oversell how much time the film spends on the Japanese anime industry because by the second half of the film, the focus does begin to drift a bit from the corporate side of things and down a rabbit hole of murder, spycraft, and moody interpersonal drama. This is a French film, after all. You can make of that what you will. But then, the fact that a film from 2002 deals with the anime industry at all, that it gives such an early look at what would end up becoming a billion-dollar international export, makes Demonlover one of those rare films that actually anticipates the zeitgeist rather than struggle to keep up with it. At one point, Chloë Sevigny is playing the game Oni. Do you remember Oni? What game could better represent the themes of the film than Oni, one of the earliest examples I can think of an American entertainment company trying to replicate a Japanese anime art style? Okay, but this is about the more adult, tentacle-centric corner of the anime industry. Why does Demonlover focus on that part of the medium in particular? You know, it's a shame that sick freaks like Joe Lieberman and Anita Sarkeesian have so poisoned the well when it comes to any conversation about sex and violence in media, and what effect it might have on a society. It's a shame it's been framed in such hyperbolic terms like do video games cause violence or is Mario sexist?
Blood splatters from the contestants' heads. When a player wins, the so-called death sequence begins. The game narrator instructs the player to finish, and I quote, finish his opponent.
Because I think there is a conversation to be had here, once removed from all the pearl clutching and the hyperbole. Demonlover alludes to a society that's become increasingly desensitized, a society whose increasing commodification of sex and violence by way of media has the potential to reduce those experiences into something cold, routine, and transactional. Writer-director Olivier Assayas cites the writings of Guy Debord as an influence, whose Society of the Spectacle posits a modern society in which all that once was directly lived has become mere representation. Debord argues that the history of social life can be understood as the decline of being into having, and having into merely appearing. The role of the smut merchants in Demonlover is to, in essence, sell a fantasy, to sell the appearance of something, in this case sex, and have it supersede the reality. They operate from what they assume is a position of control until by the end our heroine, Deanne, winds up essentially trapped in someone else's fantasy. It's funny because not long before Demonlover I had watched an anime called Wicked City, which I hadn't expected to be so, graphic, but which did offer some insight into Demonlover. In both films, sexual violence is presented as a sort of crucible for the female protagonist. In most pieces of media, a heroine's strength and capability renders her mostly immune to any physical discrepancy between the sexes. The conventionally strong and capable heroine is largely immune to any threat of sexual violence, or else it's nothing she can't handle with a sharp kick in the nuts. In Wicked City, meanwhile, the co-lead is strong, is endowed with untold supernatural abilities, and yet is still subject to very gender-specific forms of violence. You can ascribe whatever motivation you want to why that is, but taken purely on their storytelling merits, I can understand the value of both a female power fantasy that inoculates its heroine from the realities of sexual violence, but also a story that punctures that fantasy, even at the risk of supplanting it with another more grotesque one. As in Wicked City, our heroine in Demonlover is put through the ringer in ways that are at times uncomfortable to watch, but which I think serves much more narrative and thematic purpose than the crude, tentacle-centric smut it's referencing. Demonlover isn't a perfect film. The ending is more than a little little confusing, and again, it does wander a bit too far from its most interesting elements, namely the corporate anime espionage. But I do think it is a film worth reappraising, especially now. In conclusion, Demonlover is a very French movie. Okay, if you liked this video, I have some other videos about anime. All Satoshi Kon, that's about my speed. I really like the films of Satoshi Kon. I write books. If you like books, the links to all this stuff will be down below. Other than that, let me know what you think, subscribe, and all that stuff. Okay, goodbye.